Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Let's Be Clear with Senator James Sanders Jr. I'm your co-host today. I am Anne Marie Costello, and I have the good fortune of being the Director of Communications for Senator James Sanders Jr. Now, today on Let's Be Clear, we will be talking about October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. A very important month, and we want to bring light to this important issue. As Senator Sanders always says, sometimes there is some fuzzy thinking out there and you can't get a straight answer to a straight question. But here we aim to be clear, and we aim to break down complicated topics into smaller pieces, digestible pieces, and plain talk for plain folks, right? Because I know that's what I am. So I'm going to say this is an issue close to my heart because I have also been the victim of domestic violence. So it's very important to me that we talk about this. I'm going to introduce our guests and then I will let them speak about themselves. So first we have Kirlyn Joseph from Queens Defenders. She's an attorney, and she's going to be telling us about the rights that are available to people, I don't want to say victims, to survivors of domestic violence. And then we're also fortunate to be joined by Connie Pacheco, who is a survivor of domestic violence, and she also runs a program called RECOVERIES R US, where she helps survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. Now, Connie, we see her beautiful face in the photo there, but we don't actually see her because Connie had some surgery recently, but she was, kind enough to still join us and tell us her very powerful story. So we are going to, let's start off with Connie. Connie, tell us a little bit about your story and about your organization.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you, Anne Marie, for thinking of me during this month. This is, I think, the 5th time that I've been with you guys. So like you said, my name is Connie Pacheco. And just to be clear, I just had surgery on Monday, so I'm so sorry that I couldn't be visual, but I'm here. So my name is Connie Pacheco, and I'm the owner and president of RECOVERIES R US. We were first out by Far Rockaway. Now we're in Manhattan, but RECOVERIES R US is an organization that provides individuals the opportunity to become substance abuse counselors in the state of New York. In addition to that, we also have the recovery coach, peer advocate, and all the classes that accommodate those 2 credentials. Now, those credentials are very important, like you said, because most of the individuals that have struggled with addiction issues, a great deal, the numbers are very, very high when it comes down to domestic violence. So substance abuse counselors are usually deal with clients that have domestic violence issues. That's not the only thing, but of course. Now, with regards to my story, like you said, this is very close and dear to my heart for 2 reasons. One, because I am, I've experienced domestic violence in my own personal life. And my sister was murdered in 1982 by her boyfriend, who then killed himself after he killed her. So, that threw me over the edge when that happened to my sister. And of course, I am a person in long-term recovery. I came into recovery in 1985, and that's why I do what I do in the programs that I have worked. I worked in a program called named Violence Intervention Program, excuse me, that deals with, it's an organization that helps individuals, women, play a safe haven for when they're experiencing domestic violence. So in addition to that, my own personal experience has been, even in the process of my recovery, from drugs and alcohol, one of the things that I still struggle with was relationships. So even though I came into the process of recovery, I was still involved, or I guess the relationships that I had, interpersonal relationships, were of abusive nature. The last one being with my father's son, who at the time my son was maybe 7, put his hands on me, and I just, it got physical. It was prior to that, I was in martial arts for about, I want to say 2 years. And I utilized what I learned in martial arts to protect myself and defend myself at that point in time. And I swore since then that I would not allow myself to be in a position where I would experience any kind of abuse from anyone. And so that's the short version of my story. Obviously is a lot longer than that, but yeah, what has worked for me, I always talk about martial arts. I talk about being able to start with myself. I had to make certain changes within myself in order, because the common denominator that these men had was me. That's not to say that I'm victimizing the victim, right? Because I am the victim, but I had to make severe changes, drastic changes within myself in order for me to be able to establish healthy relationships with men. Healthy relationships, period.
But Connie, you left out, I think, the most important part of your learning martial arts and fighting back. You fought back literally. I don't know if it's okay to share that.
So what happened that particular night, my son was about 7, and I think my husband was watching a football game, and I don't know, I was cleaning or something, and we just got into it, and he grabbed me by my neck. And at that point in time, I utilized what they call in the martial arts a blue belt move. And I wound up breaking his nose, and I got arrested. And I live in Jersey. This happened in Jersey at the time. And I was really scared. I ran upstairs and I took my son with me. And when I hit him with my elbow with his nose, and I broke his nose, when I saw the blood and I grabbed my son and I ran, I was so scared because I didn't know what was going to happen, because I got arrested too. And when they took me to the precinct, or to the police station, as they call it out here, the judge actually came to the police station and said that he wanted to meet the person who did that to the person in the cell, because he's never seen anything like it. So it worked for me. But it was a very scary situation, because it's not something that I can erase, especially from the eyes of my son. For him to be able to have seen that, I was lucky to get out of that relationship, and I was lucky to get out of that situation utilizing that self-defense move.
Thank you, Connie, for sharing that with us. And that is a good segue to bring us to Kirlyn. Pronounce your name for me. Is it Kirlyn?
Yeah, you're saying it correctly.
Kirlyn, tell us, what legal rights do people like Connie have in situations like this?
So my name is Kirlyn Joseph. I'm the Director of Special Projects at Queens Defenders. And so one of the projects that I oversee is the service that we provide to survivors of domestic violence. And so in terms of rights, I guess I'll couch it more in terms of access to services, because as a victim, if you prosecute or bring charges against the person who's harming you, you are considered what's called a complainant. That means you're represented by the district attorney's office, and they pursue the case on your behalf. And ultimately, they make a determination as to what should be offered to the perpetrator of the crime. And so that's what happens in court. But in terms of rights and access to services, that's what I'm going to speak about, because what has been set up now to help victims, I think it is very helpful. It was not in existence before, and I'm sure Connie could speak to this. Now, Queens Defenders and other organizations have a collaboration with Safe Horizons. Safe Horizons now has a liaison in every precinct. So when someone goes to a precinct to make a complaint about domestic violence, they are immediately connected with a representative from Safe Horizons. And so in Far Rockaway, in the confines of the 101st and the 100 precinct, they then connect that person to us so that we can then support them and explain to them what some of their options are and their rights. So, um, so hypothetically, someone is victimized, that person is arrested, they're referred to us. We then speak with them to find out what are all the issues that they are confronting. It could be issues as immediate as needing emergency transportation, needing clothing, needing food for their child, needing a stroller, needing food. And so we have a grant called the Dove Grant that affords us the opportunity to then provide all of those resources to that individual who is seeking assistance. And now in terms of legal access, what we're also able to do is provide them with assistance in the areas of housing, getting emergency shelter services. And we usually do that in partnership with Safe Horizons, so that that person who is fleeing that situation, who needs somewhere safe to go for them and their children, we can make sure that they're connected to the appropriate shelter, that we can provide them with transportation to get there and anything they need in the interim, including at times, if someone needs a phone because they've had to leave their home, quickly and didn't have time to take their papers, their phone, things like that. We help them to get their documents. We help them to get the phone so that, they can function and move forward in safety. Additionally, in terms of access, legal access, right? The mayor's office started the New York City Family Justice Centers, and Queens Defenders works in partnership with the Family Justice Centers. They are the absolute best resource. Why? Because in every Family Justice Center, and there is one in Queens, and I can give you the address. You go there, or you're connected with them. You are have access to a number of different services. So if you go there and you need to meet with, say, an attorney like our office, and you want to, now that you are no longer with this person who's victimized you, you have children in common, you want to go to court and file a custody petition. The Family Justice Center will set you up with legal counsel that can assist you in drafting your petition and filing it, and preparing you to go to court so that when you get an attorney assigned to you in court, everything is already prepared. And that's important because when people file their petitions on their own, sometimes, they don't include enough facts. They leave out important elements that could lead to their petition being dismissed. So it's important to get that legal assistance right off the bat so that your petition is correct and it will, it can't be challenged because, it was drafted correctly. Also at the Family Justice Center, you get that kind of assistance, but there are also agencies there that if they have attorneys available will actually take your case all the way through. So not only will they interview you and help you prepare your petition, but they will also represent you in court. The services there also include mental health services that are on site, immigration assistance on site, housing assistance on site, as well as childcare, any number of vouchers that become available for people who have suffered or experienced gender-based violence. And right now, in particular, there's a special program going on right now that's assisting victims of domestic violence in getting their Section 8 vouchers and getting into housing. So I would definitely recommend if anyone is in that situation, on an emergency basis, obviously you call 911. The second recommendation I would make is to contact Safe Horizons because they're very responsive. I had a friend this week who was going through something and I gave her the number, and New York City's domestic violence and sexual assault hotline is 1-800-621-4673. 1-800-621-HOPE, which is 4673. She called and they were very responsive. They called her back, guided her what to do, supported her when she went to the precinct, because like I said, they have a liaison there, and she got all the help that she needs. Now, she had some issues with the officers who were there, who were not necessarily very responsive. But I will say that in each precinct, there are special units set up to work with, survivors of domestic violence. And the officers are specifically trained in how to work with someone who is experiencing that trauma, and are usually very much more responsive than, your average officer who has not received that training. So that's what I would say for now. Obviously, if you have questions, I'm happy to answer questions. But I just think that for now, these are the main resources that can support anyone who's going through this sort of trauma, by helping address, the multiplicity of all their potential legal issues, so that they get the assistance they need, and the assistance is free.
I just
I
want
have
to,
a question.
oh, me too. Go ahead, Senator.
Well, first, I want to thank you, Anne Marie. You've done a better Senator Sanders than I ever will. And I was scared of letting you speak any longer, because then the people would never want to see me, because you do such a great job. So I had to jump in here, and since we're keeping it real, keeping it clear, might as well do that. But I have a question, Ms. Joseph, my esteemed Esquire. How typical is Ms. Pacheco's story? How typical is this type of assault?
It's very common, and I can say that because I've been practicing for quite a long time. I spent more than 10 years in the integrated domestic violence part, where we did domestic violence cases, the related family court cases, and also the matrimonial cases. So I can say that I've seen these cases. The change that I've seen is it's actually, now being really treated with the respect it should be treated. Like before, when I first started practicing, it was no big deal. It was no big deal. The cases got dismissed all the time. But times have changed, and people are more aware of what victims go through, survivors go through. And so, unfortunately, Connie's situation is unique to the extent that she was able to defend herself. She had acquired the skills to defend herself. Most of the situations I see, the survivor is not really in a position to defend themselves or protect themselves. And so, unfortunately, they end up being the one that's harmed.
Mhm. Well, Ms. Pacheco, did you see any signs? Looking back, they say that hindsight is 2020. Did you see any, what are the danger signs that we can tell people about? What are the warning signs, if any, in these relationships that you spoke of?
Right. So, because now I teach a women's safety defense seminar, and I teach this at my school as well, domestic violence. And what happens particularly, now in this day and age with the cell phones and things like that. But something, meeting someone for the first time, you get these butterflies, and you get all these anxieties, and it's, oh my God, I love him, and, I like him, and this and this and that. But if you're getting 5 to 10 calls a day, 5 calls a day, or text messaging, constant text messages, that's a sign, that, I'm not saying that every single person, but those are telltale signs, right? Where they want to know where you're at all the time. You just called me 5 minutes ago. So what are you doing now? I'm doing the same thing I was doing 5 minutes ago. And so those are the telltale signs, right? Having access to your social media platforms, having access to decisions that you normally would make on your own, say, be it with hanging out with friends, or being with friends or family, or even clothing, situation, something that is like, well, you're going to wear that. And it's like, well, this is what I met you in. So now you don't like it, that kind of thing. So those are telltale signs. And yes, in hindsight, if I look at the situation that I was in, not just with this particular individual, but the trail of abusive relationships that I was in, from physical, mental, and emotional. The signs were there, but I was too blind to see it. I was too involved in other things I just didn't know. And I think that the lack of information for women in this situation, and let me tell you, not just women, because there are men that get abused as well. And those numbers must be skewed because they don't report it, because men do not, they're not supposed to, right? Um, but there are definitely telltale signs, and information and education is key to allow people to understand that there is help out there. There is something that you can do to enhance or to develop your emotional intelligence, to be able to decipher from, this is a healthy relationship, this is not going the right way, kind of thing.
Anything that you would add to that, Ms. Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things we focus on is education about healthy relationships. So, we go to the local high schools and do presentations, the libraries, other community groups, and talk about healthy relationships because, oftentimes, especially, you're in love, you're caught up and you think that what's being done is a sign of love, and it's really not. Somebody's calling you 15 million times, you're like, oh, he really cares about me, oh, he's so concerned. It's like, no, no, that's not okay. And I even had a case recently where somehow was tracking her so he could actually hear her conversations in her home
Wow.
using her phone.
Right.
He'd actually given a phone, not her phone, he'd given a phone to the child, and the phone that the child had was recording. And that's also something I got help from the Family Justice Center for that client, where they have a tech team that could go in and assess her situation and disable whatever tracking he uses. But I think a big thing that I've seen just from speaking with people is they sort of repeat what they've seen. And so, when a young lady grows up and sort of sees her mother treated a certain way, she begins to think that that's what a healthy relationship looks like. And so making that distinction for them, and like literally I've seen the light bulb go on when, you describe what a healthy relationship looks like. And they're like, wait, what? No, that's not what I grew up seeing, or that's not what I know. But it's good to go out and plant the seeds and to share what a healthy relationship looks like. It does not look like being hit every time he gets upset or she gets upset. It doesn't look like belittling or putting me down, making me feel small, so small, like I feel like, oh, I have no option but to stay with this person. I can't leave because no one else will want me. The financial aspect of trying to control all the finances, so now I have no access to go and do anything, or even to get a job, or if I work, to keep my salary so that possibly I could leave. So there are a myriad of signs and that's why we try to educate, especially the younger folks, so that they know what to look for and what to avoid.
Ms. Pacheco,
Yeah.
you work with this and other groups. What is the number one thing, or a couple of things that are keeping people in these relationships? We spoke of how to leave, but what's keeping folk in these relationships?
One of the things that we teach, because even counselors today, right? A woman comes and says, well, or says I'm in an abusive relationship, whatever have you. And the first thought or advice that we want to give is, you need to leave him. And that when the person is in that position that they're going to leave the perpetrator or the abuser, that is the most dangerous time ever for the woman, because that's when he loses control. So domestic violence is not about emotional. Domestic violence is about power and control. Once he loses that control, he fears that he's going to lose that control. He really goes out of control himself. So we talk about, it could be the kids, it could be finances, it could be cultural perspective. It could be a number of things as to why a woman stays in that relationship. One of the things for me personally, and one of the things in working with women that a lot of people tend to forget is the I love him syndrome, right? So I'm in love with this individual. I love him. I care about him. He's the father of my kids or whatever. Even if you don't have children, I love him. I care for him. And that's when I was talking about going back to, in terms of myself or women being able to take back that power and control and looking into what are the deep seated issues that we have that, and like Kirlyn was saying, that maybe this is something that we saw, maybe um from what is called intergenerational violence, that we learned this. And so that's the stuff that we need to work with, our own issues in terms of why is it that I interpret love in this form and fashion, right? And what is it about me that allows me to stay in this situation, despite the fact, that there are because there's resources out there and better resources, as Kirlyn was saying now. And women, we have a tendency of staying, and there's millions of reasons why. And this is why, aside from the resources that we're talking about, being able to provide individuals and having that straight talk. Like, I love that you said that this is let's keep it clear, because this is the issues that we got to talk about. It's not to say that it's my fault that I'm a victim, but I need to know, what is it about me that is drawn to this particular characteristic or personality, right? Because I'm drawn to it. If I am the person that's having 5 relationships and all 5 relationships are abusive, then there's something going on with me that I need to change and I need to look into. And so I remember saying that one time in a meeting, in a program that I used to work at, and everybody got on me because they felt that I was victimizing the victim, and I'm not. What I'm talking about is that it starts somewhere, and we need to go to the root of the problem. Yes, these men and women who abuse men, yes, they have issues, and we can deal with that. That's like a separate seminar. But when we come down to the victims, we need to deal with those issues as well.
Is there any program that that is successful in getting these perpetrators, usually men, but as you pointed out, not necessarily, these perpetrators help before they get to a destructive moment? I'll start with you, Ms. Joseph.
So the thing is, they have programs, like we have programs that in court where, somebody's mandated to go, but almost every year you see an article in the newspaper, in the law journal, that says the studies show that these programs don't necessarily work.
Wow.
And I think it goes right to what Connie is saying, is that you could try the behavior modification, you could try to change someone's behavior, but unless you're able to actually reach that person and have them get in touch with what is it that is causing them to react in this way, what happened in their past, or what did they experience themselves, and have them understand what that is, they can't change. And the same thing applies for the survivor. Just like Connie's saying, outside of work, I volunteered with an organization, and so I led a program in a DV shelter for 3 years, working with survivors and doing the kind of work that Connie's talking about. Because, oftentimes, if you don't go inside and do the work, you just go and attract another guy who does the same thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's that internal work. It's the self-esteem. It's that, what value do I value myself, me, right? And that's what I saw a lot of was, survivors who mentally had been beaten down to feel like that they were nothing and that they didn't matter. And so this, what, I have to take this. There's no other option. And so that's what I spent my time then working with the women to reclaim themselves, to remember who they were before this relationship, to connect to their own inner strength, because you are incredibly strong to leave the relationship, but you are also incredibly strong to stay, knowing that you're staying in a situation where you are going to be abused. So that there's strength on both sides, but it's taking that strength and having someone see, you know what, I matter. I matter, and what I do matters for my children, and my children and I deserve a better life. And so I can do that with support. I can do that. I can claim that for myself.
Well, a follow-up question to you and then to Ms. Pacheco. What percentage, a guesstimate, I know that you don't go around with a calculator. What percentage of this new thinking do you get across to the women? What percentage break the hold, the bondage from the old person and go to the new person, from the old themselves to the new self? What percentage of women are able to, that you've seen, were able to do that? And if it's a decent percentage, why can't it be done for the men?
So it is a tough question. And the thing was, the program that I volunteered with, so I was with them, working with them for almost like 6 months at a time, meeting weekly, sometimes, twice a week. So, we had time to do a lot of work, and we brought in outside agencies. I think we partnered with Harlem Hospital, and their team, their trauma team came in and worked with the women and the children. So we brought in an array of services to be able to have that conversation and have it land, and then have them take steps, to get themselves employment, to get them their housing, to take all the steps they needed to move on with their lives. So, the Family Justice Center tries to give all those services, but the only thing I can think is to say that really to get hooked up with a program that takes it that step further and helps you do that internal work, because there are a lot of services that are available, right, to address your legal and individual issues. But I don't know too many that then take that next step and have you do that internal work. But also, I will admit, I now work over in family court representing kids. So I have not been focused on the domestic violence court and those cases for about 3 or 4 years now. So I think I'll have to throw it to Connie, because I think since Connie sounds like she does that kind of work with her clientele, So, Connie, do you know of agencies that actually take that next step, that next level, other than yours?
And you know what? And that's the problem, right? That's the issue, that we need more organizations that are not just going to do what I call the Band-Aid effect, the resources, to deal with the crisis, but to go a little bit further. We need programs and organizations that are going to take that, that further. You're absolutely right. And there's not so many, because domestic violence, like any other, it's like a disease, right? So like the concept of the addiction, right? People, or when you try to stop smoking or something like that, right? People go into let's call the recovery process, and they get a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. You may not get to a woman or to a person who's been victimized right away. It takes time. It's not like they're gonna have a crisis today and you're gonna provide counseling services, and in the next year or so, that's it. They're never gonna go back to an abusive relationship. It doesn't work that way. I wish it did. I would be a millionaire. But yeah, we definitely need more organizations that are going to step up and do that work in the background with the victims and the perpetrators as well. And here's the thing with the perpetrators, I think that what happens is that it is masked by other things. It's masked by substance use. It's masked by culture. It's masked by unemployment. It's masked by so many things that we're not really targeting the real issues when it comes down to why is it that this man or woman sees the need to, exert their power and control over somebody who's more vulnerable. We're not targeting that. We're just dealing with the crises as they are. And after this pandemic, I wanted to read something very quickly that I just saw in the New York Times. It says, while 1 in 3 white women report having experienced domestic violence during the pandemic, the rates of abuse increased dramatically to about 50% and higher for those marginalized by race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, citizenship status, and cognitive physical ability. So this pandemic, everything went up. Addiction went up, mental health, suicide, domestic violence skyrocketed after this pandemic because these women were isolated with their perpetrators. So yes, there is a massive need for programs that are going to target the seed of the problem.
Interesting. Do you know of any programs that are somewhat successful in working with the perpetrators? How do we break this cycle? It seems to me that we have to do something for the perpetrators also to break this cycle, because they'll just go woman to woman.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's where you come in. That's where you come in terms of politics, because you have the ability to affect change in that form and fashion, to be able to exert programs that are going to target, the seed of the problem.
Well, I'll pick on you, Ms.
Yeah,
Joseph.
no, that's fine. Absolutely. So, so Queens Defenders, we are a public defender's office. So that means we represent people who are also accused of, perpetrating domestic violence. And what I can tell you is when we go into our clients' backgrounds, the majority of the time, when we have someone who has perpetrated violence, it is that person, our client, has themselves grown up witnessing domestic violence and also have been the victim as well of physical violence. So it may not have been an intimate partner violence, but they have been victimized as well. And so your question is spot on. How do we help to change this? And so, to settle their case, okay, they go to the court mandated program. But I think, there are programs out there that I think have begun to recognize this. And so that try to go beyond. One program I know that I used in the past that was very effective with my clients was a program called at Forestdale, the Fathering Initiative, because they worked with the person and they had the ability at that time to work with the domestic violence, but also with the substance abuse as well, and also help them learn the parenting skills, learn the skills to parent their children. And so for my fathers, that program I think was most successful because it almost was like wraparound services. It wasn't just, oh, you're just going to do batteries intervention and that's it. They got a better idea of that person's life, and then therefore could address that. And they also would do one-on-ones with the client as well. And I think that's necessary too.
Well, not to focus so much on them, because it shows this one is not really about them, but I just understand that hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
if we're going to figure out everybody has a domestic violence story. I can tell you about my own history. I can tell you about understanding families and hearing. In my line of work, I have heard this story too many times, and have wondered. I can tell you horror stories of people who felt that they had no options and had to stay where they were. I know that I agree with you that, well, Connie, I think was starting it when she was saying how this is a to deal with this, you got to deal with it in a holistic fashion, because you will find there's so many other parts. You're going to find, you may find unemployment issues, you may find drinking issues, drug issues, you may find, and you certainly, more often than not, you will find their own past socialization, where they were taught that this was the way to go, that this was the way to be. And that's true on both sides of this. The victims also, they believe that some, of course, some may say that this is him showing that he loves me. He can't help but put his hands on me, or some sound like foolishness to us, but not to them.
Right.
Is society changing? And I will ask Ms. Pacheco after you. I'll see if she's back. Is society, well, let's see if she's back. Connie, are you back yet?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Absolutely, loud and clear. They can't stop you. Before the pandemic, were we getting better at it? Were we as a society getting better at this? And has the pandemic created any setbacks?
Well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say if we're getting better in terms of identifying. So we know what the problem is, right? Most people know what the problem and the issue is. I think it's more about just and then you asked me about programs. I mean, the PAC program does a lot of work with perpetrators. There are programs out there, and I'm sure that they have a number of success stories with regards to the individuals that they service. I just don't think there is enough. You know, every 3 minutes a woman is being assaulted or abused. So I don't know. I think society, you know, I want to say we've come a long way. You know, we're smoking Virginia Slims like the commercial used to say. Remember that? But, you know, we still got a long way to go when it comes down to, you know, services, because now what we're looking at, so putting a Band-Aid effect, you know, using, taking care of the crisis is one thing. But when we start looking and we start peeling the onion and looking into that box and start, you know, looking for stuff, wow, you know, it gets deep for people. And sometimes people don't want to do that kind of work, women included. You know, they just, you know, it's too painful, it's too, and
Sure.
it's a lot of resources to do that, because we're not talking about 1 or 2 sessions. We're talking about long-term therapy. We're talking about long-term behavior modifications. We're talking about long-term. So do we have the money for that? You know, do we have the resources to do that? That's why I said it goes back to the powers that be that are able to create and affect legislation in terms of being able to provide programs out there that can do this kind of work.
I would humbly argue with you and say that it's not so much the money. We have to find the will. We as a society have to find the will, and in our priorities. When you see a budget is just a statement of what society prioritizes,
Mm-hmm.
what is important to society. That's why these battles over budgets, these are, I mean, you know, most people, their eyes get glazed over and, you know, they don't want to hear this. But that's where the struggle is won or lost.
I know.
If we can't figure ways of creating safe spaces for women and children,
Mhm.
and men for that matter, as you pointed out, anyone who has been or is being abused, if we cannot create safe spaces, if we cannot create options for people, then this problem will continue and multiply and manifest itself in sick days, people calling in sick because, you know, they they don't want to go in with a black eye or whatever the situation is. It will manifest itself with the amount of drug abuse,
Right.
people trying to get away from their problems. especially now that we're gonna legalize, we have legalized marijuana.
Mm,
We need to look at these things.
right.
There's so many different ways in its manifestation. I mean, you know, you could look at how we treat animals. You
Right.
know, animal abuse is a sign of so many things. And we've just, you're right that this is a type of onion, and if you peel it, if you think that you could just take one slice and go on,
Right.
hopefully you got a sandwich somewhere and that's it. But if you're trying to solve a problem, you're going to have to spend more time with it and delve into it. Ms. Joseph, do you think that New York State is spending enough on this issue?
No, they could, there can always be more resources. And I would say, we need to focus on trauma-informed programming. Because I was just attending a CLE today that was speaking about trauma. And someone who's been traumatized engages in all the behaviors that we just mentioned: substance abuse, risky behavior, staying in relationships that they know are not serving them and that are dangerous. And so it all goes back to the trauma and addressing that trauma and even interacting with that person in a trauma-informed way, to find out what has happened to them, that now we're seeing what we're seeing, and then addressing it. And as Connie said, and as you've said, that's not a go to 2 sessions and you're good. That's going to be a commitment to longer term work. It's a commitment to almost like individual sessions. There's a space for group as well, but a lot of the programs that our clients are referred to are more of a group setting. But when you're digging deep to understand, what has happened to you and why you're doing what you're doing so that now you can make a change, that's not prescribed in a number of sessions. So I would say that we need more trauma-informed resources to work with the perpetrators so that we can begin to cut off the head of this snake. And we also need the same trauma-informed services or different services for the survivors. Because when you know who you are, remember your inherent worth on this earth, you are able to make different choices.
I also think, Senator, you hit the nail on the head when you talked about prioritizing. I think as a society, as a country, what do what's our priority? And sometimes, like, people don't see a problem up until it becomes their problem, right? So, like you said, marijuana is legal. Alcohol has been legal forever and a day, and look all the problems we have with alcohol. So and people think just because it became legal doesn't mean we're not gonna have a problem with it, right? So yeah, I totally agree with that. Prioritizing what's a priority when it comes down to this specific issue and all the things that we just talked about. Where is this in the in the leaderboard? Where do we fit? Because I know that there's issues out there. This is just one of them.
I know that every study is saying that this pandemic has inflamed all of these
Yeah.
problems.
Yes.
I mean, you could see it by, remember we had a don't leave your house mandate. I mean, if you had tension before and you could at least you could go to work or go here or go there. Now you can't leave your house. You are in that 4x4 room with you. That's a recipe for disaster.
Mhm.
Have you seen a explosion of this tragedy?
I know I could speak to that real quick. I have. I mean, because as part of our work with the Family Justice Center, we provide free legal assistance every 2 weeks, and we're booked every time we have a slot, and it wasn't like that before. But we are full every time, and it's the stuff where it came to a head during COVID, And now, people are making steps to try to get themselves out of that situation, or to, find out what their legal recourse courses are. But yeah, and so one of the things that we did during the pandemic, our social worker was utilizing social media as a way of communicating with people who were in crisis, but only doing it for a short time, so that if the person is checking their phone, they wouldn't see, and creating like a safety word that they could text, so that we would know that there was an issue, and so that we could step in. So we had to become creative too, knowing that people were in that situation where, like, literally, everything that they did, the person's right there. So we had to step out the box in order to be able to still provide assistance. But yeah, no, it's definitely, it's stuff that was there and was festering, has now, it came out.
Do you see that also, Ms. Pacheco, or am I misreading statistics?
Oh, no, 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 you're right. Just to say it went up 8.1%, I think it was, maybe more than that. I was about 10%, but yeah, absolutely. And I have a friend who works at Safe Horizon, and he was telling me how, the number of cases that, that he's seeing now in comparison to several years ago, it's like double. It's like sad but true. Yeah, it's just, we have a lot of work to do. And this is, part of what I do in at Recoveries R Us, is that people need to get out there and do the work that nobody wants to do, because that's another thing. People much rather go work with the victim of domestic violence, but they don't want to work with the perpetrators. They need help too, right? They need help too. So yeah, absolutely. We need more counselors, we need more case managers, we need more people, trauma informed care. Oh my God, you hit the nail on the head with that one. Intergenerational violence, coming from one family to another family, another family. So yeah, it's skyrocketed, unfortunately.
And if I could chime in real quick,
Please.
I'd also say it has to be affordable. Because in court, it was getting to the point where some of these programs, are charging $75 for the intake, $45 a session. And if you're dealing with someone who is already below the poverty line, to tell them to pay this money, in essence, sometimes meant that they couldn't do it because they didn't have the money. So the services need to be out there, and it needs to be accessible, so that people can take it, can use it. But if you're going to lose your job or not be able to pay your rent because you're trying to pay for the program, then that's a problem too. It needs to be covered by insurance.
Well, what can we do in a proactive fashion? What can we do before the woman is in fear of her life, or before the first fist is thrown, or before any of this? What can we do before the man is taken out in handcuffs, before EMS is called, before the screaming, the yelling, and the terror? What can we do? Connie, let's start with you.
Oof. I gotta go back to education, visibility. You don't see commercials anymore about domestic violence. There needs to be visibility. There needs to be education. There needs to be accessibility. I just, for me, that's where it stands, being able to educate folks, to help individuals understand what's happening. So I would want to say education and visibility, and access to these services, accessibility. Mhm.
All right, Ms. Joseph.
I would say the same. I would say the same. That's why we go out to the high schools and to the libraries and do presentations there about healthy relationships, because the younger we get them, the better the chances are that we can have a different outcome. And so I definitely agree. Education, getting out there and putting the information out, so that, like, when you begin to see the signs, You're like, oh, okay, let me understand what's happening, so that, and if both parties are willing to work on it, that's obviously the best situation. So it can be dealt with before it explodes. But that's not often the case. And so at least with the education piece, um, by putting the information out there, when you're starting to date someone, you start to see the signs, maybe you realize and say, maybe not this one. Maybe I'll let that one go, you know? But it's education. It's putting the information out there about what is healthy. What does a healthy relationship look like? It's literally putting the information out there because I think as time has gone on with all the stressors and things that people deal with daily, what is a healthy relationship to some extent has been lost and needs to be constantly reintroduced and shared. And so that our young people, even if they may be growing up in mayhem, know that there is another way.
Yeah.
Well, along with that, I would suggest to you that that Ms. Pacheco is on to something with the knowledge of the martial arts, the ability to defend oneself, not the ability to inflict any problem or pain on others, not to lord over anyone, but to ensure that your rights are protected, to ensure that people understand that no means no, yes means yes. There are differences. Ms. Pacheco, is there any particular martial arts that you believe is easier, better for women?
Anyone that you can get your hands in, anyone, anything. I mean, I've been at Tiger Showman's for 21 years. I'm still there, and one of the things about my particular experience with the school is that it wasn't so much about me learning how to defend myself, because I always thought I could, right? Because I'm from the Bronx, right? So I think that I can fight, right? Little did I know, but what it did for me was that it developed my self-esteem, it developed my self-confidence. I met people who were healthy. I was surrounded by individuals who were healthy, and it just created a different uh it just brought something else out of me, my self-esteem, my self-confidence, my ability to be able to value myself that much more. That in conjunction with therapy, um, that was very important to me. I still go to therapy to today. I don't go every day, there's times that I take a break, but I think that therapy is important because, sometimes when I feel that, I don't know, I might, it can happen. It's like with a relapse, right? Sometimes you have to be vigilant because at any given point you can get into another relationship and maybe you didn't see the signs. Maybe this one is different. I don't know, but therapy, behavior modification, it's very important. And so anything that you can get your hands on when it comes down to self-defense, do it. There's a karate school in every corner just about. Get in there and learn how to defend yourself and learn, self-confidence and the ability to know your worth.
It is important, and it's going to be hard uh, to add to that. When you agree, Ms. Joseph?
Yeah, absolutely. I remember a few years ago, I spoke at an event, I believe that you sponsored, and you had someone come in and
Yeah.
do like self-defense demonstration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. Kickboxing too, one of my colleagues here does kickboxing, and it had the same effect that Connie's talking about, instilling that confidence, that self-worth, that inner power.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, 100%. I agree 100%.
I will agree with you both that it is very important that any person knows how to defend themselves. The more that you know how to defend themselves, the easier it is to live in peace with people. The easier it is to diffuse a conversation, an argument, uh, because you know that you can hurt the person. So therefore, there's no sense in it. And at its best, any of the martial arts will be teaching you to avoid fights, to find another way, to apologize, to whatever we have to do to live in peace. But if put into a position where you have no choice, make sure that the person learns to respect. And they teach them as gently as you can, but teach respect for themselves, for other people. Um, it's yes, we have taught these things to women, to men, to whoever, and we will do many more of them in the days to come as we encourage people to find. There's so many different styles, some that rely more on flexibility than on strength. So a person doesn't have to be some giant weightlifter to be effective. So you can find what is useful to you. And the first art, of course, is the art of talking, of carrying yourself in a fashion that has people respect you. Because if you carry yourself in a fashion, you will ward off much of this. Every once in a while, someone will try, but much of this you can ward off by how you carry yourself. Now, ladies, we have approached the end of this show, and I'm going to have Anne Marie give the last word. She has earned it, don't you? Wouldn't you both agree that she did a good job?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So we will allow Anne Marie to have the last word. But ladies, well, actually, you will have the penultimate. No, you know what, Anne Marie, you've done such a good work job. We're gonna have you have the last word on this show. I'm going to let these young ladies speak first. I'm gonna speak, and then I'm gonna let you have the last word on this show. You have earned it.
An honor.
Ladies, I don't know who spoke first before. How about you, Ms. Pacheco? How about you go? No, I think you went first before. Ms. Joseph, how about you go first?
Okay. Now, thank you so much for the opportunity, to be a part of this conversation. I will say that I think, you took it to levels that the conversations don't usually go to. They don't usually go to the fact that um, that someone who's been in the situation like Ms. Pacheco, the recognition that there's some internal work to be done as well, and that is in no way negating that if someone is victimized, that they need to be treated with respect and be steered in the direction of getting services that they need. But the conversation about that internal work is not one that's often had. So I really appreciate the opportunity that you provided today. And as we discussed, it's an ongoing issue. We have to keep it in the forefront. It has to be a priority. The safety of individuals, of the children that are involved, is paramount. And so any programming or funding for programming that continues this work and allows people to heal and confront, their demons, so that they could actually be present for their partner, their children, I would encourage you to support. And it was a pleasure, Connie, and a pleasure, Anne Marie and Senator. Thank you so much.
The pleasure is mine. Ms. Pacheco.
Senator, thank you. Thank you so much. Anne Marie, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, Kirlyn. Thank you so much for always thinking of me and asking me back to talk about this topic that's near and dear to my heart. I just wanted to say that if in the future you wanted me to come down your way to do the women's safety seminar, it's only an hour and a half. It's free, and it's very informative for the women. And we don't only talk about domestic violence, but we also talk about sexual assault and other issues that for women. So yeah, that's the Women's Safety Seminar. And if there's anybody out there that's listening and needs any kind of help, you know, my number is 917-265-8090. We're more than happy and we're standing by. We have coaches that coach individuals with these particular kind of problems and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you. This is so important to have happen. So thank you very much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Connie, give your telephone number again.
It's 917-265-8090. That is the office number.
Well, I thank both of you for helping to shed some light on areas that we just need to keep the spotlight on. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are going through this. We pass by them every day. They're the people we work with.
Yes.
They're our family. They're our neighbors. They are people that we are at the supermarket, and sometimes they're ourselves. So we need to remember these folk and stand with them. We will always, this office will always stand with the victims. We do understand that there are situations that drive people towards, and we are very sympathetic to anything that's driving people towards this stuff. But once you put your hand, that changes. You've changed. You've changed our sympathies, my friends. And then we're going to be sympathetic to the victim. So as long as you don't put your hand and you want to talk to us about unemployment, racism, we could talk of many different things, and this office certainly does. And we can show you how to organize around it. If you want to change it, we can. You don't have to internalize it. Organize around it. Help stop the problem. But stopping the problem is not putting your hands on someone. That's you've taken it to a different level. My mother taught me. She said a good run is better than a bad fight. A good run is better than a bad fight. If you see that you're losing your ability to reason, you can leave. You can get up and leave. Temporarily, hopefully, and until you calm down, until they calm down, and then you can talk. There are coping mechanisms that we can do, and if you need any of those, you can get in touch with my office and get in touch with me, and we can speak further on these things. So we will always stand with the oppressed. We stand with those catching the hell. And one of the saddest things is when victims become predators. It's just a sad thing. We say that we need to confront the problems that are creating the oppression. We encourage people, don't take it out on the kids, don't take it out on the woman, don't take it out on that man. Why don't we take it out on the systems that are creating the oppression? I think that that's rather, you want to be macho, how more macho can you get than confronting the very system that causes the problems? You can't, it's hard to do higher macho than that. And of course, I'm tongue in cheek because I don't think that we should be macho at all. We should just be ourselves, and that'll take care of most of that problem. So I am very grateful that y'all have come here and have educated us. I am grateful again that Anne Marie continues to grow and develop and blossom herself as she shows that she too can lead a podcast better than most. Having said that, I will let Anne Marie have the last word here. She has earned it.
Thank you, Senator. So I would say to women out there who have experienced this, that It doesn't have to get to be physical where it's a partner putting their hands on you for it to be abuse. It can be emotional, it can be psychological, it can be threats, it can be control, but there's always a way out. And I would tell people to turn to a family member, turn to a friend, turn to a pastor. Don't make the mistake that I made and think that there is no way out. There is always a way out. And I think that women don't give themselves enough credit. You're a lot stronger than you think you are.
I couldn't have said it better if I said it myself. In fact, I did say that. That was me. I was lip syncing. Congratulations to you all. I look forward to working with you both, with all three of you actually, on this issue and other issues. And with that, we couldn't have been clearer than we have been now. So this session of Let's Be Clear has been cleared by me. Thank you very much. Take care all.